Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sincerely Self podcast. Today, we are joined with Dr. Jeanne Retief. She is a skincare innovator and a mental health advocate. Also, she is the creator of FIggi Beauty. So, Jeanne, tell us a little bit about you and also kind of what led you to create your brand.
Okay, so thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so my background is actually in the international laws of war, and I practiced in that international human rights space for over 16, nearly 20, almost towards 20 years actually. And I absolutely love what I did. I still love it. I still do some of it, but I was diagnosed with panic disorder, which I was diagnosed with panic disorder before it became cool. So when I was diagnosed, it was still very much stigmatized. My diagnosis came from my traumatic upbringing, my abuse history, and part of my history was that I had a very long line of familial mental health issues and diagnoses that were only diagnosed very late in their
Mhm.
lives. So I just grew up thinking that this is extremely bizarre behavior and not understanding it. So, apart from the fact that this diagnosis was stigmatized, I also stigmatized it because I thought I don't want to be this way. I don't want to be like this too.
Yeah.
So, that led to a very intense denial of my diagnosis for at least 3 years, and it made it so much worse. So at the end of 2020, beginning 2021, I just had such a complete breaking. I could not function normally. I couldn't function as a normal person from day to day. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't eat. I was very, very sick. So I needed to step away from my career, and that was very hard for me. But from that, eventually, FIggi was born.
I feel like sometimes the best creations or the best things come out of when you think you've hit your lowest low. When you think everything's kind of fallen apart, it actually ends up kind of forming back together into something even more fitting for you at the time. So I love that that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is the most difficult part of my journey because I get asked the question a lot from a standpoint of kind of admiring bravery from other women. Like, oh, how did you decide to change your career? And what made you take that leap? And this is so wonderful. And then I always have to go back and say, but this unfortunately is not how my journey went. I did not choose this. I did not want this. It's really something that I, for a very long time, felt happened to me. And I was
Hmm.
grieving that identity loss and I was grieving that loss of purpose and where am I finding myself in the world at the moment. So my kind of career shift was born out of necessity and survival.
Hmm. I love that you say that because I think that's the side of it that not many people are willing to kind of talk about
Yeah.
because it is scary trying to switch into something else, and sometimes you do feel like you're kind of forced into it, and it's really the way you're going to view it of this is happening to me or this is happening for me. So I love that you're touching on it wasn't all a beautiful, wonderful shift. It was hard and it happened, but now it's become a good thing.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I'm very vocal about kind of highlighting that part of the story because that was a big part of what really held back my progress in getting to a healthier space in coexisting with my diagnosis because
Hmm.
I was also overwhelmed by all of these messages of, oh, we have the golden cure, or we did this and then we never had a panic attack again, or I was where you are now and then I did this and I fixed myself. That kind of narrative, and also the narrative of kind of skimming over the hard parts. Like, it was very hard for me in the beginning, and I lived out of my mom's garage, but now I'm a billionaire and everything is fine. But nobody kind of goes into those moments in the garage, like how
Yeah.
truly bad they were.
Hmm. Yeah, people hear these stories when they're going through the trials. And yeah, you're right. Nobody talks about how hard it was in the in-between period, the in-between the change, you know? So I love that you're like, I want to focus on this because people need to know that it's normal to go through that really hard period.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, yeah. So I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when I was 21. So I kind of feel you in a way of getting a
Hmm.
sudden kind of diagnosis like that and not really knowing what to do with it at first, not
Hmm.
really knowing how to take that. So I really feel what you mean.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And I feel it's so hard in the world right now because, you can have a whole different episode and conversation about why that seems to be it. But the fact is that, as you know, with your own diagnosis, panic disorder is a group of anxiety disorders that need to be medically diagnosed. You need to be followed by a psychiatrist, by a psychologist. And it's so hard in the world right now where there's this over kind of self-identification with being anxious or having bad anxiety because it makes it so hard for those of us that really honestly do struggle to find our place in the world, because not only do we have to explain ourselves, we have to triple explain ourselves, because now we have to explain why we are the way we are, and then we have to explain, oh no, but we're not like that group that feels like they're just anxious because they couldn't get the right cup of coffee today.
Hmm.
So it just makes like our already kind of complicated path even more complicated.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel like it's kind of almost a trend in a way for people
Mm.
to kind of self-diagnose themselves with anxiety. And that's not to say that people, don't struggle with it and aren't diagnosed, but it does make the path so much harder for those who it does impact their day-to-day life severely, and they do have really big struggles with it because people just kind of brush it off or they don't like take it as serious.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one has to understand that, it's not fun to be super stressed or to go through a period of chronic stress or to go through a burnout, perhaps, which also brings on a very high level of stress. And you would need some help and direction through a period like that. It's not nice. But
Hmm.
stress is a normal human emotion. It's so necessary, actually, because that's what gets us in our fight or flight stance. That's what prepares us for things. That's what helps motivate us. It's not fun to be angry. It's not fun to be frustrated, but it's a normal human emotion. And
Hmm.
I feel these days that just because you don't want to deal with a normal human emotion that's uncomfortable to deal with and to feel does not mean that you have a diagnosable illness unless you have been medically diagnosed. And I just
Yes.
want to be very clear that I obviously have panic disorder. You've already shared your diagnosis. I have intense sympathy for people who do have it. I believe, obviously, that this diagnosis exists. It's just we're finding ourselves in a very interesting time in the world at the moment.
In what ways do you feel like through your journey, you've been able to kind of break the stigma with anxiety and the stigma of it kind of holding you down?
How I've been able to to break the stigma, like kind of facing outwards towards how the world interacts with me. Um, I don't know that I've changed that, but then again, I don't know that I've tried to change that because
Hmm.
I've always seen it as this is my diagnosis, whether it's good or bad or ugly or beautiful. It's my responsibility to understand my diagnosis and to know how I should show up in the world and communicate towards others to ensure that I'm doing the best that I can do with these kind of tools that I've been given, with this wiring that I've been blessed with. And that's how I really kind of go about the stigma for myself, just to be able to function in everyday life, because the reality of it is I cannot expect other people to change the way they act or how the world revolves because I have difficulty. I need to understand how I show up in the world now in order to make it still work for me. And part of that is one, taking responsibility, and two, understanding how I communicate with others. A good example is I have a really wonderful support system in my husband. He really is there for me, but he does not have anxiety. If you have never had a panic attack, that absolute confrontation with death, it's so hard to explain to somebody else what that feels like,
Mhm.
especially if they're sitting on the outside of the person having the panic attack, looking at you, thinking and being able to logically and reasonably think, nothing is happening to this person. They can breathe. They're just
Mhm.
freaking out, or however they see that. For you, in that moment, you are absolutely convinced you are taking your last breath, you are dying, and you are most certainly losing your mind and going crazy. To
Mhm.
explain that to somebody who just doesn't have those kinds of things happen to them is really, really hard. So even though they might want to assist you, they really just can only understand up until a point. So there, it's my responsibility to communicate and say, even if I don't know, um, listen, I have read about this one thing that we can do when I'm having a panic attack. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know. But can you help me? Can you help me try?
Mhm.
Or I'm having a really bad day today. I don't understand myself what's going on. I'm feeling very nauseous. I'm feeling very anxious. I really don't know what to say why. I don't know how to logically explain it to you, but I just need you to know that today I'm just struggling. Even that is okay, as long as you communicate and you bring it into your system that's supporting you, and then it tends to get easier as almost like a ripple effect going out into the world,
Yeah.
making the stigma a bit better.
Because I think a lot of times people who are struggling with like severe anxiety, if their support system doesn't have experience with panic attacks or anxiety, it is, like you said, hard for them to understand. And I think some people kind of downplay their panic attacks or in their anxiety for that reason. Because other people are like, oh, it's not that bad. You're just kind of freaking out, because they don't understand. So I love that you're like, your feelings are valid. What you're feeling is really hard, they just don't understand yet. And you just need to do your best to kind of, show them different things you've read to help you out and just let them know how they can help you.
Yeah, 100%. Some of the things that I I had many conversations with my husband about was when we were still figuring this out, because now I at least understand what's happening to my body. In that moment, all bets are off. But, when I'm sitting here speaking to you, I can understand that. At the beginning, I had no idea. I thought I had some sort of almost terminal illness. I thought there was something wrong with my heart or my brain. I went from neurologist to cardiologist to gastroenterologist. I did all of the tests because we didn't know what was happening. But when we got to a point where we understood, okay, so this is what's happening, many of the communications that we had is out of a point of pure love and wanting to help and calm me. My husband would tell me when I'm in the midst of a panic attack, calm down, or I can see you're fine, thinking it's helping me. But my point of communication then to him is that is the worst thing you can tell me in that moment, because you are actually reaffirming to my already super freaked out mind that everything is actually not okay. Either that, or two, you're confirming my belief in that moment that I'm going crazy because I feel like I am honestly dying and you're telling me I'm fine and I just look
Yeah.
fine. So can
Hmm.
we reword the things that you tell me in those moments in a way that I think will calm me better? And some of the things that help me is when he is just there. He's not, saying anything necessarily. I just know he's there, the presence is there, or just telling me, I'm here. I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to sit here with you. That helps me a lot. But again, it comes to communication and understanding your responsibilities to your support network as well, because they
Yeah.
can only support you as best as they understand what is happening with you.
Hmm. And it is so important to kind of know what you need in that moment. Like you were able to figure out, I just need his support and his presence and just kind of positive. affirmations of I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to be here with you through all of it. So for women who are kind of starting their journey with anxiety and panic attacks, what advice would you give them to kind of tell their support system or just things that they can try to self-soothe in that moment?
Yeah. So I think it's just important. I've just learned this through my many years and my diagnosis and many questions to my psychiatrist. But as
Mhm.
I'm not a medical doctor, but as I understand it, there is a key difference between anxiety attacks and panic attacks. Both are equally horrible. Um, but I would say it's okay not to know. Just communicate that you don't know because it took me a very, very long time to be able to come to a point where I even was able to communicate this to him. Like, okay, maybe you should just
Mhm.
say, I'm here. That's my real fear that you're going to leave me. So I would say start from a point of very candid and transparent, I don't know. Saying things like, I know that if you say this to me, it really freaks me out. I don't know why. I cannot explain it, but can we just avoid these sentences? And can
Mhm.
we work together to understand what then does work for me? I can't tell you now because in the moment when I'm having an anxiety or a panic attack, all bets are off. So it's going to be a bit of a trial and error. But if I know you're on this road with me and you know where I'm at and we're figuring this out, next time when everything is calm, we can sit down again and we can rehash this. You can ask me, how did this work for you? And I'm good. Well, that actually made me feel a little bit better, or
Mhm.
that made me feel worse. So I think the power that you can give yourself in the not knowing and the fact that you can communicate that as well is so, so, so helpful because we always, I think, put it upon ourselves, especially when something like this happens that's so stigmatized, that's so subjective. You need to be able to explain it. You need to have all the answers. You need to have like a roadmap and directions. And that's unfortunately just not how it works. And that's okay.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that you normalize so much just the not knowing and the still figuring it out because I think a lot of the time when people talk about anxiety attacks or panic attacks, they don't really focus on the not knowing and the still figuring it out, that in between period. They only talk about, oh, well, I figured this out and I came to the other end of it and I'm successful in being able to manage it now, you know? But it's not that easy. It comes in waves and it's still a journey, you know? So I love that you are like, it's okay to not know and it's okay to still be figuring it out.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, this goes back to our conversation in the beginning about navigating the world as it is and tying into this not knowing. That is, as I said, what was one of my biggest setbacks is this narrative around me that this person found the cure, this person got it right, and I am by nature a perfectionist. So when I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to really start kind of working towards accepting this diagnosis, I just thought, okay, I can read all the books, I can do all the exercises, I can learn all the meditations, I can fix this.
Hmm.
And then I would have a panic attack. And you have to understand that the panic attack is not just the attack, right? It's what it does to your body trauma wise. That dump of adrenaline, the psychological trauma you go through in being in that, as you perceive it, honest to truth, near death experience is such an immense strain on your body. So
Hmm.
after the panic attack comes the panic hangover, which lasts anywhere from 24 hours to 2 weeks, depending on how bad the panic attack is for me. And
Hmm.
that means intense fatigue, like feeling like you can't even lift up your arm, really bad depression, like you are in a pit because everything that's just skyrocketed has just dumped down. Um, Migraines, nausea, stomach issues. It's a whole thing that comes with that, right? And
Hmm.
everybody else I felt had to suffer through this with me. I have a little girl, I have a husband, and then I would think, oh, I did it wrong. I didn't follow the rules. I didn't follow the instructions. And now I'm here again. And I can't understand why I'm here again because I'm doing all the work and I'm doing everything right
Mm-hmm.
until I realized that this is the way I am wired. I have been diagnosed and re-diagnosed and re-diagnosed and re-diagnosed because I refuse to accept this um, so many times. And this is just the way my handbook of life works.
Mm-hmm.
I am in a space where I am much better able to manage it, but I still have panic attacks. It's still going to
Yeah.
happen to me. And nothing I do is going to change that because this is just the way I am made.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized that, and I said to myself every time this would happen, it was a bad day. I went from having bad days every day to bad day once a week to a bad day once every 6 months. It was just a bad day. I'm not going to overanalyze this. Tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to try again.
Mm-hmm.
And that has helped me on my journey so immensely because I am not broken and I am not wrong. I'm just wired differently. And
Mm-hmm.
with that comes very unique gifts, but also unique challenges. And that is okay.
Yeah, because I think instinctually as people, we blame ourselves or we're too hard on ourselves that we, can't figure it out. We're still having the panic attacks or still dealing with the anxiety, whatever it is, because it's not going to go away. But if you don't go too far into it or get too mad at yourself, it can just be a bad day. It doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody has bad days, you know? Everybody
Hmm.
has bad days. And it looks different to everybody. Yeah, okay, if you're having panic attacks, your bad day may be a smidge worse than somebody else's, but
Hmm.
it's just a bad day. And tomorrow you
Yes.
get to try again.
I love that. So, with FIggi Beauty, how have you kind of used this as an outlet for you to do your creativity and also help other women?
So, Figgy Beauty was born because there was so much of my diagnosis that I could not control. And obviously, as a natural perfectionist, that's very hard. And many times when you have an anxiety disorder, this is one of the issues. You have this compulsive need to control. So, that was very hard for me to accept. And then as I started learning more about myself, how I interact with my diagnosis, how it shows up in my life, I started realizing, well, wait, there are some things that I can control. So, for example, I can control my diet and how that shows up with my irritable bowel syndrome triggered by my anxiety. I can control my physical movement. For example, this is my office, and you will see I have all sorts of equipment here because I will literally get up and start bouncing around on the trampoline or jogging on the treadmill just to get rid of that anxious energy.
I-
And I can also control what I put on my skin because sensitive skin is one of the major external symptoms of my anxiety. When you go into that fight or flight motion, your brain dumps this whole bunch of cortisol and adrenaline in your bloodstream. It shoots to your nerve endings, which are many of them under the first layer of skin. So you get
Mhm.
that itching, burning sensation, that redness, breakouts because of the inflammation. If you have eczema or rosacea or shingles, you may notice it gets a lot worse when you're stressed, or it may actually flare up when you're stressed. And it's because of this mind skin connection.
Mhm.
So I know this wonderful ingredient from my native South Africa that I know and love, rooibos tea. I don't know if you've ever had it.
I haven't.
Okay, you should try it. You can, I think you also call it red bush tea. Um,
Okay.
it's a very well researched herbal brew, and it's also used in skincare because it's got this very unique anti-inflammatory properties. And I thought, okay, well, I had to give up this career that I didn't want to. I'm stuck in my thoughts all day long. I can do something about this external symptom, and I'm going to have to go back to school to do my certificate in cosmetic chemistry. So it's going to take my brain off things. It's going to keep my brain busy.
Mhm.
And that's why I founded FIggi. So again, born of like pure survival instinct and necessity, but blessing me in the path in understanding that I'm not alone. There are others struggling with this as well. And that's what then led to FIggi Soul, which is like the sister element of FIggi Beauty, the online courses that I teach based on my own experience on how to find your way to peacefully coexisting with your anxiety. I can't heal you. I can't cure you. I don't have a cure. If you have a cure, wonderful, share it with me. But I can tell you what I do in my daily life to manage it in a way that I can still have a quality life with this diagnosis.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I love that you've created a community and been able to help so many other women through their journey. As I'm sure you've heard, you have countless stories, I'm sure, from the women you've been able to meet through FIggi Beauty and FIggi Soul. So that's so amazing. The last question I have for you, Jeanne, is what advice would you give yourself at the time of your diagnosis in 2015 with what you know now?
Oh boy, what advice would I have given myself at the time of my diagnosis? I would probably not give myself any advice. And the simple reason for that is that I was not in a state to accept advice. So I needed to kind of suffer through that and reach that breaking point in order for me to get where I am now. Nothing that I would have been able to go back and say to myself would have helped me because I was so closed off to this idea and I was so completely consumed with the fact that nobody could know. This cannot be real. Everybody's making a mistake. I had this feeling that doctors weren't taking me seriously. They were telling me I have like an anxiety disorder when I'm clearly probably dying of some kind of heart disease or some I really had the worst time accepting this. So I don't think there's really anything I could have said to myself to
Mhm.
change the way that this kind of played out.
Yeah, and it's almost like it kind of played out exactly how it was supposed to. You had to go along that journey to kind of figure it out.
And that was a just to kind of reiterate, that was a brutal journey.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It wasn't this beautiful poetic moment. It was a
Mhm.
lot of ugly crying, a lot of self-loathing, a lot of inner work. I mean, it's not over. I still do it every single day. I have to get up, I have to follow the routine, I have to follow the steps, I have to watch what I eat, I have to exercise daily, I have to check my meditation, I have to check in on my triggers. Like it's still an ongoing journey. So yes, it led to something beautiful, but I just don't want to trivialize how hard the hard parts are.
Yeah, I love that because I think so many times people get on like a type of healing journey and they think that there's a start and a finish and then you're perfectly great and awesome and you don't have to do it ever again. But I think there's like a start when you start making the conscious effort to heal. You wake up every day and you choose to try and do things that are gonna help you live a better life and have a better day, but you're still going to have bad days and it's going to come in waves. And there is no end point of healing. It's just a choice that you make every day that you're going to try and do it.
Yeah, 100. I mean, you said it so well. That's exactly right.
So before we started recording, Jeanne was talking to me and she was like, I am just going to share exactly how I'm feeling. Like, I hope that's okay. And your insights are so real and authentic. Like you don't sugarcoat it at all. And I think that's amazing because that's what so many people need to hear. Because the people who are stuck in the in between, they think it's not normal because nobody talks about it. The people who are struggling, even if they've had their diagnosis for years, think it's not normal because nobody talks about it. So I love that you just normalize it and you're like, it's okay. All of us are doing it. And you are the one who's like, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to normalize it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, Jeanne. I will list everything for FIggi Beauty and FIggi Soul so you guys can go check out those websites, also the social medias so that you can go and learn a little bit more about Jeanne. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. And I will see you guys next week.